Well, hello, dear listeners of Aries-vcx call. Today's 21st March 2024. And on today's call, I want to go through mainly the recent changes we have done, and also perhaps go shortly uh, over some architecture overview of potential new component, which was mentioned last time, as some kind of a DITCOM framework. For now, let's call it a DITCOM framework RS, as a bit of a more framework-ish or a batteries included approach, which would be building on top of the existing Aries-vcx. Basically, we already have something like that. It wasn't just very much marketed or propagated, if you will. It's a bit buried and needs a lot of facelifts and probably rewrites of some of its parts. But basically, we already have this in some shape or form, but needs a lot more thinking, and I would rather just consider a new component. So anyway, those are two main topics for today. So we can dive right into it and go through the list of things that has been done recently and or are in progress. So starting with some big improvements we have done in DITCore and did exchange. This is a PR which has been open for a long time. All right, I think this is not exactly the one I was looking for. Is it? Is it? Yes, this is it. So this PR is the main point, the main idea, the first principle all other changes were stemming from, where no, damn, this is not the PR. Hang on a second. Let me find that. There's two similar ones. I guess that was PR opened by me, and it contained a word generic. Let's see. Okay, this is not how the search works, apparently. So I'll just do it simply. The PR has been opened a while ago, so it's a bit difficult to find, even though it has been merged relatively recently. Um, yeah, this is the one I found. Ah, there we go. Yeah, this is a much bigger delta. This is what I was looking for. So let me just make sure that our agenda, our notes here are correct. So this is the right link. Okay, now let's get back to it. So this was big changes stemming from some first principles applied in did core components, mainly fact realization that it's not really good to have the ID document being generic over type of services it holds, as that's really it's very limiting in runtime, and it just doesn't fit common requirements are the ID document might have different shape and form of services included, and you don't usually know what kind of DID document you'll be resolving, what kind of services it will or will not contain, and therefore it doesn't really make sense to make the service type part of the being generic, and definitely not making the ID document generic over the service objects. So this was removed, following now a more runtime approach, and all the other changes here built on that. So this subsequently propagated on the upper layers of did exchange. It led to nice simplifications and generalizations for both the requester and responder of did exchange. And just overall, I think we managed to caution also some error handling improvements and some side refactorings which came up along the way. So yeah, this has been done, and I think this will make it a lot easier for people to consume the DIT core components here. I think there's should be also included here a demo, or at least modified. Okay, this is not the demo I was looking for. Is it this one? That's the ID methods, with peer, demo RS. What kind of demos we have here? Okay, we're not looking for peer. Nevertheless, there is a demo in the DIT core component, the core module, which showcases how you work with the document, how you construct it and manage it, and so on. All right. Next up, another important milestone, catching up with the other Aries implementations, is implementation of DIT Peer 4. So this has been merged also recently. And yeah, is adding DIT Peer 4. There's a demo, which is the go-to demonstration, how one should be using this thing. Demo, examples, demo, DIT Peer, examples. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, that was added a new section in the demo, which particularly is focusing on the Peer 4 demonstration, and it's pretty straightforward. In general, apologies for a noise. I'll have to change my room real quick. So just a second. All right, and we can resume in the overview. So yeah, we were checking out this the Peer 4 implementation. So generally, it's what we do here is very straightforward. We just build instance of DIT Peer, DIT Peer 4, and then we resolve it and get back the DIT doc we have encoded as a part of the DIT Peer 4. The way DIT Peer 4 works is that you initially build sort of a pseudo DID document. It's not really a DID document as 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 per official spec. It's a alternation of the official DID document, and this alternation itself is documented as a part of the DID-Peer-4 spec. So this alternated version of the ID document is modeled here with this DID-Peer-4 encoded document. We might get some rename here. Not sure this is final. But we have a builder for that. So you build your DID document, you attach your services or your keys, verification methods, so on and so forth. And then you transform these encoded document, you use it as input to create instance of DTV4. And that's the information which then subsequently the DTP4 itself encodes. But once you resolve the DTP4, you get, of course, the actual, you're supposed to get the actual DID document as per the official spec. So that's what this short demo here is showcasing. And yeah, we can get back now to the other points. So the other points here are probably not as significant. So we have, I'll just run through them briefly. We have some Aries agent refactoring, changes which came up as a part of adding support for testing did exchange and did peer in the Aries engine test harness. Next up, linking to that, I'll just condense this together. So linking to that, we have added also, we made an update to the interrupt test suite. This needs to be merged, but this should get us better interrupt results with other frameworks, in particular adding support for did exchange, testing did exchange. I got successful results testing locally. We'll see how these things go once merged and running in the official AATHCI. Fingers crossed. And as a part of this work being done, it came to me that it'll be much easier to keep things in sync, and it'll be a lot easier to develop ATA backchannel as well if it becomes part of the repo. So it was indeed moved here under the Aries-vcx repo. And yeah, we'll have a guarantee that we can all be forced to keep it in sync with all any changes we do, and there will be definitely yet significant changes to the Aries Rust agent, a component, the component building on top of Aries-vcx. So this ATH backchannel and the Aries agent Rust, the changes can be done hands in hand, kind of together, and it'll be just easier to maintain and develop, especially. So that's about ATH. We had refactoring. New feature, new support for new protocols, and finally we moved the ATH backchannel itself into Aries-vcx repo. And now coming back to this point we skipped. So there was a DID parser, new DID parser implementation shipped in a while ago already by Mirror. And so the value was there, and this new parser is a lot more robust and relies on more standard approach, building on top of awesome work done by the folks in the GNOME library, the maintainers of the parsing library called GNOME. And so in this new component, the API is mostly preserved, same as it was before. It's just that the underlying implementation is using the GNOME library, and that makes things a lot simpler, a lot more readable as well. So this PR is not really adding new features. It's simply removing the old implementation, and um, not adding, it's just linking the new implementation with the rest of the repository. So we are now integrated. Uh, um, the GNOME-based approach is now integrated with the Aries-vcx and the other components. So that's awesome. And lastly here, also a significant update actually is that we finally managed to remove the mediated connection, which was there because we there was a users of this, but there is no users of the mediated connection no more, to my knowledge. So we comfortably remove this. And yeah, I mean, mediated connection has been deprecated for a long time now. There's a other component simply called connection, or in current times, even more recommended to use edit exchange. And yeah, nothing still prevents you, of course, from mediating connection. It's crucial to mediate your DITCOM channels in case of mobile use cases. But the mediation is something that's meant to be done by yourself. So Aries-vcx simply supports uh, processing Aries messages, but right now it's not that as much batteries included to include the mediation. So DITCOM mediation has to be done outside of Aries-vcx. And yeah, this legacy component was finally removed now. So that's that. Lastly, I just want to outline an idea for which is kind of shaping up bit by bit as we proceed. So on a previous call, there was a diagram shared, an architecture diagram shared. That was February 22nd. Yes, this is the diagram. So on the previous call, I believe it was the previous call, I was talking a bit about about this diagram and about the architecture and what does the repository contain. So just quick recap. There's two parts to the repository. There's Git core, which is simply preoccupied with all the W3C related stuff. So parsing dates, resolving dates, did peer, did solve, um, modeling the ID document and stuff like this. So just supporting these really foundational layers. And then the other second part of the repo, that's the Aries part. And the Aries part is bigger and older, and it has various subcomponents. The main kind of core component of the Aries part is the Aries underscore VCX crate itself, um, which helps you to process messages and generate responses to Aries messages and do all the stuff necessary to be done in between. So all of the interactions with wallet, cryptographic calls, ledger interactions, all of this is glued up together in Aries-vcx in order to support processing Aries messages. The disadvantage of this approach was that it's well, it's pros and cons. It's pro and con at the same time. So it's a more library approach where lots of things you yet have to do on your own outside of Aries-vcx as the consumer of the library. Mainly, what you have to typically do is handle inbounds, so receiving messages, listening on some channels, or on a mediator, dealing with mediator, or listening on a TCP port for incoming Aries messages, dealing with outbounds, so sending messages to your counterparties, and also a thread matching and your own business logic somewhere in between that. But mainly, these trees are essentially re-implemented in every agent which decides to consume Aries-vcx. That means we do this logic in the Aries-vcx agent over here to support a back channel. We do the same thing in the mediator, although there's less protocols there, so it's not as visible, but basically there is duplication as well. And if we decide to implement issuer verifier service, we would be doing the same things once again. So there's apparently a space to abstract this logic and these common patterns. And that's where this idea of creating some kind of processing framework is coming up. So I have a sketch of the architecture for this framework in very, very early stages. And it's not yet even uploaded. I'll be uploading this later. I think it still needs a bit of a refinement. But the main idea is that if you're building agent, this big white box represent DITCOM agent. You're gonna handle your inbounds, your outbounds, whatever those are, whether you are dealing with HTTP WebSockets, whether that involves a mediator or not, or even protocols like Bluetooth and so on. So you deal with how you actually send and receive messages over wire. And as a framework, it should help you to abstract those commonly repeated parts. So you just provide a message to the framework, and it does on your behalf the thread slash ID message thread slash message ID matching. It finds a instance of given protocol of given DITCOM conversation based on the thread or the ID in your storage, in your protocol storage. And again, that's something that would be pluggable, so you can implement your storage whatever the way you want. And then once that would either resolve to some existing protocol, which is already being tracked by some thread ID, or possibly create a new instance of a protocol. And next kind of optional, I guess, in some cases, I mean, required in some cases and impossible in in other cases would be sender authorization. So when you receive a message in certain context, obviously you want to make sure that the message that the sender uh, that the sender of this message is the sender you expect the sender to be, and it's not somebody else trying to hijack the conversation you are having with someone else purely on the basis of attacker's knowledge of the threat. So yeah, so obviously you need to authorize the sender based on the sender keys. And then there will be some kind of then you actually deserialize or start processing the Aries message. We start to deal with more Aries context. And the idea, and this is very rough sketch and rough idea, perhaps that might be triggering some kind of event back to the user's application, which would implement event handlers for different kind of events. The APIs in this area and how this processing would all be happening and integrated together is not quite clear to me. You also have to, at some point, uh, before or after agents interaction, uh, you probably want to store, create instance of a protocol or possibly update it. On the other hand, sometimes you might want to only update the protocol after the event is handled by the user. This needs a bit more thinking. There also might be some default handlers or auto processing, and not everything might have to be uh, handled by the event receiver. Yeah, it's just a question of how the protocol would be driven forward and what kind of interactions there should be with the agent application, as we want to give enough flexibility so the agents can actually implement the logic to process the messages, display them to the users, or call some kind of internal business logic, and how to link that with driving the protocol further, whether the agent application should make a call back into the agent, back into the framework, telling the framework to proceed with the generation of response. But ultimately, this is a bit of a vague description here, saying message processing. I guess it's just reflecting uh, the early stages of this proposal. But ultimately, there's a uh, response generation, generating generating Aries response. And then there would be, as a last step, I suppose here, encryption for the receiver. Um, so something like that. Let me just clean this up a little bit. Make sure we can have a nice arrows. Okay, maybe not. I'll do the later. So for now, just this tiny arrow here. And yeah, once the fully encrypted Aries contextual Aries response is generated, presumably or possibly the outbounds might be again handled by the agent. I think the inbounds and outbounds is something that can be flexible enough to, or like variable enough that it can be desirable to keep this thing outside of the framework. But I can also imagine to actually stretching this out and having these inbounds and outbounds also part of the framework to save up even more of the duplication which the agents would be implementing, and perhaps just let them focus on implementing the missing pieces in the linking the linking the receiving messages to whatever is the business context of the agent. And outbound and inbounds are arguably kind of technicality. So I can imagine there might be a interface which can also be pluggable, but with some defaults. So we can provide HTTPS implementation for outbounds, but I can imagine inbounds will be almost always handled actually by the agent, because there's every agent can be quite unique in this regard, and somebody might be using one HTTP server, somebody else might be using different HTTP server, somebody else might be just using custom mediator or some kind of exotic protocols. So this is roughly the idea. Perhaps the parts which would be typically implemented by the agent in this paradigm would be some kind of event handlers. Once a message is received, the message can be communicated to the agent, and agent evaluates this event, decides what to do, and sends back, calls back into framework with some kind of instructions of what should happen next. So maybe this is some kind of, not sure about this arrow here. Maybe it's in some kind of auto processing type of scenario. This might not be necessary, but I think in many protocols, the control flow would go from the framework to the application, back to the framework, and then finally sending the response message based on how the agent evaluated the circumstances. And also, as mentioned, the inbounds, that's also something that would be typically probably done by the agent itself, but maybe not as much with outbounds. Those can be imagined pretty standardized. So this is a rough idea of kind of a framework here in white. These blue parts are something that might be pluggable, and let's do red parts being, or maybe purple parts being something that's done by the framework itself, and lastly the green parts, a logic done by the agent. So that's the idea. We'll need some more refinement, some more thinking, more experimentation. So I'll see how that goes next time on this call. 2 weeks later, might have a clearer idea on this after some discussions. So thank you for tuning into this. Hopefully it was useful, and feel free to reach out on Discord, Hyperledger Discord. There's Aries-vcx channel, and yeah, thank you and have a good one.